Revelation 3 and verse 7 from the New Living Translation. Write this letter to the angel of the church in Philadelphia. This is the message from the one who is holy and true, the one who has the key of David. What he opens, no one can close, and what he closes, no one can open. In his revelation from Jesus, John moves on to the church at Philadelphia, addressing the angel there with his message. Philadelphia was a city in what is now Turkey, and in those days it was on a trade route of strategic importance. Not much remains of that first century city because of earthquakes in the region, but when John wrote his revelation, it was a thriving place, extending Greek culture to surrounding nations. In Revelation 3 and verse 7, Jesus once again, as he has done before, establishes his credentials. He is a holy and true one. Now in Hebrews 7 verse 26 we read, "He is a kind of high priest we need because he is holy and blameless, unstained by sin." He is also true, as we read in John 14 verse 6. Jesus told him, "I am the way, the truth and the life." But what is this key of David? Jesus was repeating the prophecy made about himself from Isaiah 22 and verse 22. We read, "I will give him the key to the house of David, the highest position in the royal court. When he opens doors, no one will be able to close them. When he closes doors, no one will be able to open them." Jesus was often referred to in biblical literature as being the son of David, indicating his royal ancestry. So what is it that only Jesus can open and close? The Isaiah prophecy mentions doors, and that would seem an obvious target of Jesus' keys. But what doors are they? What are they for? And what is so important that only the Son of God has access to them? In Matthew 16 and verse 19, the words of Jesus in a conversation with Peter were recorded. He said, "And I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you forbid on earth will be forbidden in heaven, and whatever you permit on earth will be permitted in heaven." So perhaps this key of David unlocks a door into the kingdom of heaven. Now heaven is a special place of complete holiness and purity, a place where God lives, a place that, although we only get a glimpse of it through the Bible, we still gain something about its wonder and ultimate desirability for our eternal home. There is a script used much in old cartoon films and pictures of a person who has just died arriving at the gates of heaven. Everything is white and shining and there's a few clouds around, and Peter is sitting behind a desk looking down at the person, consulting books to see if he can be allowed in. But nothing can be further from reality, from the truth. The door into heaven isn't opened by a key when we die. There is no Peter or even Jesus waiting to let us in that respect. There is a process that has to be gone through first. A process that will unlock the door ready for us at some time in the future. Jesus, while he walked the paths in Palestine, didn't focus on the place called heaven so much as he talked and taught about the kingdom of heaven. We have to understand that there is no sudden transition between life and the afterlife, between our earthly kingdom and the heavenly kingdom to come. There is firstly a choice to be made, and Jesus was teaching that the kingdom of heaven is here right now, and we can access it and live in it through the one who has the keys to open its door. We start our journey to enter heaven at the cross, where Jesus went through a horrible death so that we would gain entry into his kingdom. By accepting in faith that he is the Son of God, believing in our hearts that he died for us and only salvation comes through him, then Jesus will unlock and open the door for us into his kingdom. There are only two kingdoms accessible to us in this life: the kingdom of darkness or the kingdom of light, the devil's kingdom or God's kingdom, the earthly kingdom or the heavenly kingdom. Whatever though we call them, there are only two kingdoms, and there is a sobering and important fact about these kingdoms. The default kingdom is not God's. If we want to spend eternity with God, then we can only enter his kingdom by choosing to do so. Going back to our scripture in Matthew 16, Jesus very publicly gave Peter the keys to the kingdom of heaven. If we read a few verses before, we see that Peter had just made a statement declaring Jesus' divinity. We read in verse 16, Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." On the back of that statement of faith, Peter went on to make very effective use of the keys to the kingdom. After he preached his Acts 2 sermon, 3,000 people were added to God's kingdom. He unlocked the door into the kingdom of heaven for them, and they subsequently chose to enter. But Peter is long dead. Did the keys to the kingdom of heaven die with him? Thankfully not, because when we become a child of God, we not only receive the free gift of salvation, we also receive the key that will enable us to unlock the door into God's kingdom for anyone we meet. We have a responsibility to fulfill our God-given commission by firstly telling others about the kingdom of heaven, and secondly by telling them how to enter. That is unlocking the door. And for those who reject the free gift of salvation from God, the door remains locked. By default, they will continue to live in the earthly kingdom and will find, when they cross the great divide, that the door into the heavenly kingdom is locked and they cannot enter. Instead, they will join the devil in the other place for eternity. One last thought. We are living in a period of unmerited grace, a time when God has graciously made entry into his kingdom possible for all. There is no monetary charge for entry. Salvation is a free gift. In Romans 10:10 we read, "For it is by believing in your heart that you are made right with God, and it is by openly declaring your faith that you are saved." That's what God requires. A choice that will allow Jesus to unlock the door for us. So the question for everyone today is this: which kingdom do you want to live in? Please folks, make the right choice before it is too late.